The Scales of Compassion. The atmosphere inside the courtroom was thick with a unique blend of anticipation and solemnity, yet there was an underlying current of warmth that emanated from the bench. Judge Ebony K. Williams sat with a presence that was both commanding and deeply human. She looked down at the nameplate resting before her, which read Judge Ebony K. Williams, and she knew that within these four walls, her perspective was the one that would steer the course of justice. She often told those who entered her sanctuary that she was a woman shaped by the soul of North Carolina and the spirit of Louisiana, tempered with a certain West Coast cool and sharpened by a New York edge. Her mission was simple yet profound, to ensure that equal justice was not just a phrase, but a lived experience rooted in freedom and integrity. The first case of the day brought two young men, Mark Ward and Jonathan Green, into the light of the court. Mark Ward, the plaintiff, stood with a look of quiet frustration, seeking $425 for a television that had met a tragic end. Across from him stood Jonathan Green, a man who felt the weight of the world on his shoulders, countersuing for $1,550, a sum representing his lost wages. Judge Williams began the proceedings with a gentle but firm inquiry. She asked Mark Ward why they had gathered there today. Mark explained that he was suing his former roommate for the destruction of his television. He recounted a day that had spiraled out of control after Jonathan returned home from a corporate event. According to Mark, a verbal argument had quickly escalated into a physical scuffle. Accusations were hurled like stones, with Jonathan claiming that Mark was the reason he had been fired from his job. The tension led to pushing and shoving, and in the chaos, Mark was knocked into a coffee stand. The television, which had been the centerpiece of their shared living room, fell face first onto the floor, its screen shattering into a web of broken glass. Mark presented a receipt and a photograph of the damaged device. Judge Williams examined the evidence, noting the stark reality of the broken screen. She then turned her attention to Jonathan Green, seeking to understand the root of the animosity. Jonathan took a deep breath and shared his side of the story, a tale that began with an act of perceived kindness. Mark had lent Jonathan a suit jacket for a company retirement party. The event was held at a beautiful indoor and outdoor venue, but nature had other plans as a sudden rainstorm began. In a gesture of chivalry, Jonathan had offered the jacket to his boss to protect her from the downpour. Once they moved inside, Jonathan shook the jacket to dry it off, and in that moment, a small bag of marijuana fell from the pocket and landed right at the feet of his boss and several company executives. The consequences were immediate and devastating. Jonathan was fired the very next Monday morning. He explained to the court that as a freelance graphic designer, finding stable, full-time employment was a rare and precious achievement. The loss of the job felt like a crushing blow to his future. Judge Williams listened with empathy, acknowledging the growing difficulty of finding such roles in an era where artificial intelligence was beginning to reshape the professional landscape. Jonathan recounted how he had returned home, fueled by anger and disbelief, to find Mark sitting calmly in front of the television. He had confronted Mark about the hidden stash in the jacket. Mark admitted to the court that he had indeed left the cannabis in the pocket after a moment of forgetfulness following a relaxed afternoon on the balcony. He had been eager to return to his program and had grabbed the first jacket he saw in the closet to give to Jonathan. As the story unfolded, it became clear that the physical altercation was a manifestation of deeper frustrations. Mark argued that Jonathan was already on thin ice, having received 2 prior warnings at work for being late and for a misunderstanding with a client. Mark felt he was being unfairly scapegoated for Jonathan's cumulative professional struggles. Jonathan, however, felt that the jacket incident was the final straw that broke his career. Judge Williams took a moment to reflect on the situation. She looked at the two men, seeing not just litigants, but 2 human beings struggling with the consequences of their choices. She decided to address the counterclaim first. She informed Jonathan that she was dismissing his claim for $1,550. While the incident with the jacket was unfortunate, it was the 3rd strike in a series of workplace issues. The responsibility for the loss of his job lay with his overall performance, not solely on Mark's negligence. Turning to the primary claim, the judge addressed Mark. She noted that while he had been honest about his state of mind that day, his lack of attention to detail had placed his friend in a precarious position. When a friend is heading to a professional event, there is an extra duty of care. However, she also recognized that the physical aggression initiated by Jonathan in the apartment was not a proportionate response to the mistake. The shoving and pushing that led to the broken television were actions that Jonathan had to answer for. Judge Williams ruled in favor of the plaintiff, awarding Mark Ward $425 for the television. She offered a final piece of wisdom to both men, encouraging them to take greater personal responsibility and to be more mindful of one another's lives and careers. She expressed a hope that they might find a way to move past this conflict, though the air between them remained cool as they exited the courtroom. The doors opened once more to welcome the next case, one that pulled at the heartstrings of anyone who had ever loved a pet. Tom Frisk entered the court seeking $95 from his ex-girlfriend, Alicia Chin, but his true desire was the return of two beloved cats named Pearl and Opal. Tom spoke with a voice tinged with sadness, accusing Alicia of taking the cats after he had lost his job. He felt that she had begun to tear down his character, criticizing his ability to contribute to the household even though he had been covering the rent. Alicia, on the other hand, argued that she had taken the cats because she believed she could provide a more stable environment for them during Tom's period of unemployment. The court viewed photographs of the two feline companions, their bright eyes and soft fur filling the screen. It was clear that these animals were cherished. Alicia presented evidence of the medical bills she had paid for the cats, including an emergency visit when Opal had accidentally stepped on a nail. She recounted a night of stress where she felt Tom had prioritized video games over the well-being of the cats after a long day of work and surgery for the pet. In the heat of their breakup, Alicia had moved out and taken Pearl and Opal with her. Tom presented a verification of the adoption form, which showed that both of their names were listed as owners. They had shared the joy and the financial burden of caring for the cats together. Judge Williams looked at Alicia and noted that while her intentions might have been rooted in a desire to protect the animals, taking them without a clear agreement was not the right path. However, the judge explained that the court's power was limited in this specific matter. She could not force the return of the cats, but she could address the financial aspect of the adoption fees. She ruled in favor of Tom Frisk, awarding him $95 for the adoption fee he had paid. As the proceedings came to a close, the emotional weight of the broken relationship was evident. Judge Williams watched as they left, a reminder that the law often intersects with the most intimate and painful parts of the human experience. The courtroom remained a place where stories were told, lessons were learned, and the pursuit of integrity continued. Through every case, Judge Ebony K. Williams sought to provide a voice for those who felt unheard and to ensure that justice was served with a blend of wisdom, humor, and a deep respect for the human spirit.